Are we ready? Emily here? All right. Good evening. Welcome. This is the November 16th meeting of the Olentangy School Board. Ms. Hatfield, please call the roll.
Mr. King.
Here.
Mr. O'Brien.
Here.
Mrs. Patrick.
Here.
Mrs. Wagner-Fiesel.
Here.
And Dr. Weiss.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, please stand and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Before we get started, we do have an agenda to approve. We don't have any changes, so do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? So moved.
So moved.
Second. So Kevin and Lakeisha. Call the roll, please.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
Dr. Weiss.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick.
Yes.
And Mrs. Fiesel.
Yes.
Thank you.
We have two presentations tonight, and the first one is on student well-being. So if we could have Dr. Alicia Behrens come up too and present. Hello.
Hello, good evening. Thank you so much for having me this evening. I'm going to update you on our student well-being initiatives for the district. So just to remind you that we are looking to improve and eliminate non-academic barriers for our students here at Olentangy. We do know from research and from the experiences we have here at Olentangy that our students, we like to say they have to Maslow before they can bloom with Bloom's taxonomy. So we have to make sure that our students' needs are being met in all of the areas before they can fully learn. So we want to make sure they're feeling safe and secure in their learning environment. They have all of their basic resources met, food, clothing, things like that, so that we can make sure that they are able to fully learn and engage in the classroom. And then we have our non-academic barrier umbrella, which kind of encompasses all of the areas where we're trying to target for those non-academic barriers. One being mental health, second being substance use, third being physical health, fourth being safety and security, and finally behavior support. So unfortunately, I don't have Olentangy data for this year due to COVID and everything like that. But historically, our data has mimicked the national data. So I did want to pull up some national data on students in mental health, just so we can see the rise that's happening with COVID. We already knew there was a rise in mental health needs and concerns prior to COVID, and unfortunately, there's been a lot of increase due to the anxiety produced from COVID, social isolation, and things like that. So the first graph just shows parents reporting worsening mental health for their children ages 5 to 12. And so you can see overall, their parents reported a 22% increase during the pandemic for concerns of their mental health. And again, the second chart shows students, high school students who seriously considered attempting suicide, showing from 2009 to 2019. Obviously, those rates were on the rise. They did take a little dip in 2017, but then they have jumped fairly significantly over the past couple years. The pandemic's effect on mental health, like I had mentioned, it's had a significant effect for lots of reasons. But some data with that, the prevalence of depression and anxiety symptoms in children and adolescents have doubled. During 2020, the rates of visits to the ER related to mental health has increased by 31%, and 46% of parents are noticing new or worsened mental health conditions in their teenagers since the start of COVID. And I do have a little chart on there that shows again, increases in anxiety, depression, sleep issues separated by gender as well. So overall increase. And again, this is national data, but we've seen our data parallel to that. And anecdotally from our mental health staff, we are definitely seeing an uptick from previous years. We usually start at a certain baseline and then start increasing from there. This year we started at a higher baseline, but are still having our same increase that we typically see around this time of year. So we're definitely feeling those effects. And then this graph shows the sources of where students are getting their mental health services. So obviously the majority of students are going to get their mental health services from a specific mental health setting, such as a counseling office or something like that. But secondly, students are getting their mental health services from an educational setting. So that's through their school counselor, a school psychologist, a school social worker, or other school-based mental health professional. So that's the second place where students are getting a good chunk of their mental health services, which leads to why we need to help support the mental health needs of the students in our schools. So we do have our tiered system here at Olentangy, where we have our tier 1, which are our universal interventions and preventions in place for all students. We have our tier 2 supports, which is brief and targeted intervention in small groups for students who need a little extra support. And then tier 3 for those students who need some more intense intervention and more individualized supports. Going from tier 1, we have 48 school counselors, 27 clinic aid nurses who are in the building doing the physical health every day with the students, and 7 school resource officers. For tier 2, we have 6 school social workers, and we're hiring our 7th right now, 29 school psychologists, and 11 school nurses. And then for tier 3, we have 10.5 mental health specialists through OSU and Centero, and then 3 behavior specialists. So overall, our students supported is actually going to be our total number of students that we have in the district, since we do our universal preventions with classroom guidance and things like that. And then more targeted support for our nursing services. All of these numbers have increased from last year. Obviously, with our population growing, that's going to make sense. For individualized health plans, we have 195. We have 112 medical 504s. 369 food allergy action plans, 199 seizure or epilepsy follow-up plans, 225 asthma action plans, and 90 seizure action plans. Sorry, I have the seizures repeated. The 199 are kind of lower needs, where we have kids who just have seizures intermittently and not regularly, and then the 90 are kids who have more serious seizure disorders. And then we do have all tier level mental health support in every building. School social workers are assigned several schools throughout the district, and then Centero is providing services K-8, and we do have a Centero clinician assigned to every building. And then OSU, we have the 4 full-time in each, 1 in each high school, and then 1 overseeing all 4 of the schools. School social workers at this point in the school year have supported approximately 525 students. Centero supported 292 students, and OSU has supported 105 students. One new thing that we added with our OSU contract this year is access to a psychiatric nurse practitioner through Harding Hospital. This is not something that we are paying for the services for. It still does get billed through the family's insurance. However, it provides our students more immediate access. So if we have a student who's looking to get medication management at the request of a parent, then we're able to link them with our OSU clinician, and they're able to get an appointment with that nurse practitioner fairly quickly, within about a week or 2 weeks at the most, for that intake and medication management. And again, that's still funded through their insurance, so we're not footing that cost, but it provides more quicker access, because we do have a lot of students who are on wait lists for 6-8 months for medication management at a lot of different agencies. Yeah. So we like to show the balanced support that we're providing at Olentangy to all of our students, but as well as our staff and our parents through trainings, programming, and supports. So we are still running our trauma-informed care trainings throughout the district. Again, it's kind of a slow rollout. It's a long training, trying to get all the staff trained on trauma-informed care. So we're doing chunks and buildings at a time, a few a year. We are offering mental health first aid training. We're doing that, Katie Branson and I are doing that through an OPDA, or also through targeted building trainings if a building wants us to come during PD day. And then we're hoping to eventually be able to offer that as community, to the community as a training as well. We provide Cognito, which is an online suicide prevention tool that teachers can go through simulations of if a student comes to you in crisis and they're saying these things to you, what do you say to them next? And it gives corrective feedback on how to approach that student and how to get that student to a person to help them. Obviously, we're adding our curriculum to follow the ODE, social emotional learning standards. We have the prevention and intervention services to those students. At the high school level, we have our Active Minds groups, which is a student-led group to promote the discussion of mental health and reducing stigma, and really just starting that conversation to be able to have students feel comfortable and staff really feel comfortable about talking about it, and it's okay to not be okay. We also have our Parent Academy and PBT programs. We just did a program last week on anxiety in youth, and we had just from the live event on Wednesday night and then through the next day, we had 355 people watch, which is quite good for our PBT events, so we were very excited about that. We had a professor from Columbia University present that for us. And then one more new initiative that we're working with this year, which we're very excited about, is the Neighborhood Bridges program, which is a community outreach program that several districts were already using, but they help link advocates within our school. So our administrators, our school counselors, and school social workers work as advocates, and if we have a family or a student who needs certain resources, we put that out as a need to the community, and then a community member can say, oh, hey, I have a washer and dryer I can donate, or I'd be happy to give a gift card for groceries or a winter coat for a student. So that has taken some of the burden. Our social workers were doing that previously and kind of reaching out to the staff and finding out if anybody had things to donate, but now Neighborhood Bridges is facilitating that. And I think we have met the needs of at least 25 in just the month and a half or so that we've been having it up and running. And again, everything from groceries, winter coats, to we've had a couple driving lessons that have been donated, eye exams and eyeglasses. So it can really be anything, and our community is really stepping up and helping then our own community members who need help. So looking ahead, we're going to continue to support our students with the transition back to in-person learning while also continuing to navigate the pandemic. Unfortunately, the pandemic is not gone yet, and our students are having a difficult time with transitioning back, especially those who were on virtual learning last year. We had some school avoidance and school anxiety prior to COVID, and then it has just increased during the past year, so we're really trying to wrap our arms around those kids to really help them feel safe and comfortable in school and get them back to learning. We're continuing to look at our social emotional learning prevention programs, more parent presentations, and of course, staff professional development. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions?
So if you go back to slide 7 on staffing, how should we put that staffing in context? Is that where we want it to be? I mean, I think we've made some investments in this area over the last several years. So how should we think about kind of staffing levels?
Yes, so we've been working, so our school social workers are probably stretched the most thin right now. They all have 5 to 7 buildings that they swing between. And so they have a difficult time, you know, they're scheduled at one building, but then a crisis pops up at another building, so then they have to run to that building and then don't get to see the kids that they were going to see at that building. So they're probably spread the most thin, I would say. So increasing those numbers. For right now, we do have a wait list for both OSU and Centero as far as our Tier 3 mental health. We're trying to triage that. Are there students who can get support outside of school? Making sure we're really targeting those kids who have barriers to getting their support outside. And again, sometimes they can move down to Tier 2, but then our social workers, again, are hopping between the buildings. And then if they can get support for the time being from their school counselor, then that's good as well. So I certainly think we can continue to grow in this area as our student population grows, the need grows as well.
Well, we've built in staffing additional social workers. Alicia presented us with a plan to leadership as we built the 5-year forecast. So there are some additions in that regard. We are in, kind of constant discussion with Ohio State about whether or not we need to up the contract there. The state aid came through with student well-being funds. So right now it's a little bit more than what we're contracted with Ohio State. So we're able to kind of look at some of those other areas, but it's all part of that 5-year staffing plan that we looked at to support the staffing that's in this 5-year forecast.
And that's also why we're an education setting. We're never going to be a fully staffed mental health setting, right? So that's why we look at what are we doing for staff professional development? What are we doing for student development in order for, we know that peers are gonna go to each other. So what trainings can we give them so that they know if they have a friend that they're concerned about, that the
So-
friend can get them to.
And that's really the thing we've always done with really everything is leverage our staff, the majority of our staff, teachers in the classroom. So maybe touch on the trauma-informed care trainings you're doing, because that's really the first layer, the first gatekeeper, the first opportunity to identify kids that are experiencing or have experienced trauma and what the effect that has.
Can we just touch on that, you said?
Yeah, just
Okay, sure.
kind of-
Yeah, so the trauma-informed care training is really, it's a universal prevention measure that it's almost a lens to look at everybody through. We don't know who's been through trauma, we don't know what trauma they've been through, but that doesn't matter. If we do certain things, or if we treat people certain ways, or if we react to people certain ways, if they haven't been through trauma, it's good for them. If they have been through trauma, it's really good for them. So it's really an approach to take with all students, and so we can understand how the effects of trauma are going to come out in the classroom. It can come out as inattention, it can come out as memory issues, it can come out as ADHD type of symptoms, it can come out as withdrawing and not talking and not participating. So giving those teachers signs and things to look for, and then also tools that they can use in their classroom. So whether it be keeping your lights a little bit dimmer, or not doing the flashing on and off of lights to get kids' attention, because that can be really alarming. If you have a child who's starting to escalate, how you can get down on their level and how you can de-escalate them just verbally without having to intervene with any kind of CPI techniques and things like that.
Any other questions? Mindy?
Well, I going back, you don't have to go back to the slide, but the slide about the anxiety and suicide attempts and how they go up. I think that my favorite PPT presentation was a gentleman that came in from California that spoke about technology and how it's altered the brain.
Yes.
So I would be interested in seeing the same, like lay the graph of technology and its increases over the anxiety and mental health.
Technology usage and then
Yes,
anxiety.
yes. I think.
I'm sure there's a study out there.
I'm sure there is, and I don't have a degree in mental health. Wish I did. It'd come in useful with young, teenagers and young adults. But I feel like that's a really big component of our kids' anxiety today.
Yes.
Is that part of the trauma care that we're providing, or?
Yeah, so we do talk about social media in the trauma-informed care training and how that can continue to trigger students who have been through anxiety or have been through trauma. Obviously, if they're seeing things that then re-traumatize them, that's just gonna bring them back, and you can just open up their phone, see whatever it is, and then they're instantly in the middle of a class where they were fine, and they happen to look at their phone, and all of a sudden they're back into a trauma moment. So we do talk about that in the training. But aside from that, we do talk about the social media effects on kids in general and their mental health. And now they're even doing all of the studies with Facebook and Instagram and showing how some of it has been proven that it's been detrimental to young children and young adults' mental health. Just with the fear of missing out and feeling like everyone's life is all sunny and rosy and yours is not, and things like that. So there have been plenty of studies. I could have probably done a whole presentation just on that, but yeah, it definitely would be interesting to see, and I'll find it because I'm sure it's out there, of the correlation between if your technology use is increased, does your anxiety increase? Because I'm fairly certain the answer would be yes.
Thank you.
That's good. That's a
Yep.
good question.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Michaela Thomas, and she's going to be talking to us about what's happening in the world of equity and inclusion here at Olentangy.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Michaela Thomas, the Assistant Director of Equity and Inclusion, and this is my first time presenting at a board meeting, so I'm super excited. A little nervous, but excited. So thank you for the opportunity. Even though I'm new to the role, I'm not new to the district. I've taught first grade at Cheshire Elementary School for 11 years, and held some leadership positions in the building and also at the district level with equity and inclusion. My family has actually been in the district over 20 years. My 3 siblings are all graduates of Olentangy, and my mom's a bus driver in the district too. So we are vested in the district, but I'm excited to be able to serve our district in this capacity. So I'm going to start with our equity and inclusion team. So it includes myself and Dr. Stephen Lewis, who is our supervisor of equity and inclusion, Heather Cole, our coordinator of equity and inclusion, and Shannon Griffin, our K-12 district diversity chair. Even though our team oversees the diversity efforts of the district, you know, it truly takes a village working together as one Olentangy to make sure that students feel a sense of belonging here. So I want to thank the board, our superintendent, district leadership team, and countless other staff members and students and families who work tirelessly providing support, love, and care to our school community. So please know that your efforts do not go unnoticed. So this is the goal of our department, which is to support the district's strategic plan of promoting a culture of inclusive excellence in order to facilitate maximum learning for all students. So we believe that by creating a sense of belonging for every student, that they will flourish in the classroom and beyond. It is through the active, intentional, and ongoing engagement with diversity and inclusion, equitable access to educational opportunities, and affirming the rich diversity of our students that they will truly be prepared with the 21st century skills that they need for a global economy. And our Equity and Inclusion Action Plan is a 3 to 5 year plan that was created based on the suggestions and recommendations gathered at the 2020 summer town hall meetings and also some small group community sessions. And so it was developed by our team, but also had input from the district leadership team, our district diversity committee, and also the Leadership Advisory Council, which included staff, parents, students, and alumni. And the 5 areas within that action plan are measurement and accountability, policy and handbook, recruitment and retention, training and education, and stakeholder engagement. The district's mission, vision, strategic plan, policies, and our Equity and Inclusion Action Plan all drives the work for our district. One of the policies that I wanted to highlight is the Board Policy 2211 for Multicultural and Inclusive Education. So Olentangy Schools believes that the curriculum, instructional materials, professional development, all of those should reflect an inclusive perspective. It should also help students understand themselves and others and appreciate and value the similarities and differences in people. This policy promotes acceptance, understanding, cooperation, and appreciation of diverse groups of people, and it also challenges and rejects all forms of discrimination in our schools. This policy not only informs our work, but it's research-based and it's considered what's best practices when engaging with all stakeholders in our school community. So over the next 3 slides, I'm going to talk about ways that our team engages with the community. So we have our student engagement first, and there are some areas there I kind of want to highlight. First is our Student Equity Leadership Advisory Council. This is a superintendent's committee that's facilitated by our Equity and Inclusion Coordinator, Heather Cole. The goal of this council is to provide space for high school students across the district to build relationships, cultivate student agency, and make recommendations to building and district leadership around diversity, equity, and inclusion topics. One of the goals in our action plan is to extend this sort of advisory council to the middle school level in the near future. We also have restorative education sessions. So the Ohio Department of Education has mandated that all learning environments in Ohio will implement PBIS, which is Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports. It's an effective and proactive framework for improving safety, social competence, and academic achievement for all students. So restorative practice falls underneath PBIS. The goal is to provide a less punitive approach to discipline and create a culture of care for our students, which fosters education, accountability, and maintaining those positive peer relationships. Our department offers those restorative sessions as just one way to respond to student wrongdoing when it comes to issues of diversity, equity, or inclusion. So how this works is if a building administrator requests restorative practice as, restorative session as part of the discipline process, then we would first require parent approval and then also get agreement from students to participate, and then we would conduct those sessions. And during the session, the students share their account of the situation, They reflect on the impact of their actions. They discuss multiple perspectives in historical and social context, and then they consider repairing the harm. We also support student diversity groups. So we support our diversity liaison with their clubs at the building level. And we want this to be a positive experience for kids, so we help with whatever they need, whether it's resource gathering or education and training, or even if it's just being present at their clubs, which is so much fun. I actually just went to Cheshire this morning and was there at the club kind of helping out with the kids. So it's really a great experience for our students. And then lastly, another way we engage students is through our Global Scholars Program. It's a 3-year program through the Columbus Council on World Affairs. And through this program, high school students increase their cultural competency and gain global citizenship skills. So in year 3 of the program, they actually complete a Take Action project on a global issue. And then they present their final projects to the panel. And right now, we have approximately 50 students participating in that program across the district. And another way is through staff engagement. So we help to design professional learning experiences for teachers, and we also provide professional development and training to other departments in our district, like transportation, food service, athletics, and pupil services. We also collaborate with the communications department, student well-being, curriculum and instructional technology to ensure equitable access and promote a sense of belonging. We also facilitate OPDA, which stands for Olentangy, Professional Development Academy courses, and book studies for teachers to take like continuing education credits. And if they just want to explore their interests or extend their learning, we also provide that. Diversity liaison support. So our district has a diversity liaison in every building. And sometimes they share the position as well, so you might have 2 people at a building. But they provide building level support to teachers and students, and they communicate the district's goals towards continuous improvement and promoting that culture of inclusive excellence. And the diversity liaisons are our eyes and ears at the building level, so we, of course, provide them with any training, support, or resources that they need throughout the year. And then our Heritage Month resource document. So we curate resources for teachers around various Heritage Months and History Months, as well as provide a monthly interfaith and cultural calendar. The purpose of us providing these resources are to build cultural competency within the Olentangy community, to celebrate the histories and cultures and contributions of people around the world, and then also to support our educators with incorporating these resources into their classroom and at the building level. Each resource document has sections for various disciplines. They have announcements, bulletin boards, activities, crafts, music, books that students can read pre-K through 12. We also, we have, such a rich history here in Olentangy, and also a lot of diversity. And so we just want to make sure that our curriculum reflects that multicultural and inclusive perspective that's in our policy. We like to say we provide students with windows and mirrors. So windows for them to see out and see how other cultures live, and then mirrors for them to see themselves within the content. And equity and inclusion is basically interwoven into every aspect of our organization. And it's also in our mission statement to facilitate maximum learning for all students. So we kind of hit all of that when it comes to staff engagement and student engagement. And finally is our community engagement. So we have our district diversity committee, which takes place 4 times a year. It's open to the public, all stakeholders. And the ultimate charge of the diversity committee is to make recommendations to the superintendent that support the district's mission and ensures that the diverse talents, skills, and experiences of our school community are valued and respected and supported. Our next diversity committee meeting will actually be in this room at administrative offices on December 1st at 6:00 p.m. So another way is through engaging in conferences, workshops, and collaborative work with local organizations. And several of those organizations support our One Community Conference, The conference started in 2014 with only 95 participants, and now it's grown to over 450 attendees. It creates a platform for students to showcase their voice and provide our community members with a unique learning opportunity focused on supporting our students and families. So I wanted to give you a little bit more information about the One Community Conference this year. So it's our 8th annual One Community Conference series, and the theme is Looking Back to Move Forward. There are a total of 4 in-person events starting in January, so mark your calendars because we want you to all be there. The first event is the Mlk Day of Service on January 17th. This event is a way to give back to the community by donating items to organizations in Delaware and Franklin counties. We want to observe MLK Day as a day on and not just a day off. So last year, our community donated over 15,000 items. We actually shut down Orange Road. So it was a good problem to have, but we are working with the police department and our security to make sure we have those provisions for the traffic flow this year. So anytime between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., you can come to administrative offices, drop off your donations, and we would love to see you there. And the second event is during Black History Month. We will participate in a district-wide African-American read-in. This is in conjunction with NCTE, which is the National Council of Teachers of English. There's going to be 2 separate chapter books this year, one for middle school, one for high school, and then there's also going to be a pre-K through 5th grade reading calendar, which has over 16 different books written by African-American authors and illustrators. We will have an author's visit as well. We just don't have the name yet or the book titles yet, so that's all forthcoming. But I do want to thank Olentangy Education Foundation and the Ohio State Wexner Medical Center because they sponsored that event. The third event is on March 19th, which is our 2nd annual district-wide service plunge. And this event is open to all families, and it's a great way to not only give back to the community, but also learn through service. So they actually interact with the community. So students have the ability, students and their families have the ability to choose various service projects and engage with community partners across Delaware and northern Franklin counties. So last year, our volunteers were at Delaware Preservation Parks, Habitat for Humanity, Family Promise, Boardman's Arts Park, and then Source Point, just to name a few. There were many more. And then last but not least is Mrs. Patrick's favorite event is our student keynote. So on Saturday, April 23rd, join us for the One Community Mini Conference. It's not going to be a full day conference this year. It's going to be from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. at Liberty High School. And there's going to be various workshops and presenters, as well as our student keynote, which is a fan favorite. We believe that centering student voice and experience is at the heart of what helps to make us better as a school community. There's going to be flyers and information through email and also the RSVP through our district newsletter as well. And our last slide here is just some ways to connect with us. So we do have a Twitter page, and we post pictures there and information about what we're doing. It is at OLSD_diversity, so you can definitely follow us on Twitter. We have quarterly newsletters that we do, so please read those quarterly newsletters that come out. There is a district podcast that we do. Well, I was featured on one of those called Hello Olentangy, and so we'll be there, and that's available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And then you can also show your support by ordering a One Community t-shirt or any other Olentangy gear from our online store. And then lastly, join us for a diversity committee meeting, and like I said, it is going to be December 1st from 6 to 7:30 p.m. So that is all I have for you this evening. I will take any questions at this time.
Any questions?
No, you didn't. Restorative education,
Yes.
isn't that really just peer-to-peer mediation?
It kind of is, except peer-to-peer mediation is with students with students. And so what we do is we actually work one-on-one with students. It's rare that we bring the students together at that time. We kind of want to talk through the situation with the student who did the harm. It's more of discipline process, like a less punitive discipline process. So we're working just with that student and kind of going through what happened, giving them some ideas and strategies on how to deal with it if something like this should arise again. We just want to create that culture of care. So actually putting the person who was harmed with the person who did the harming, we don't know if that necessarily is the best thing at that particular time. So that is something that we would kind of work through with the student.
And we use that as a reduction of discipline because we're an educational organization. We're not about discipline. So just like we would with a suspension for a drug and alcohol violation, if a student and their family chooses to do an education program, that could reduce the suspension or reduce the disciplinary infraction. Because again, ultimately, all we want is for the kids to learn.
And create that culture of care, because we don't want to re-traumatize our students either, and we do want them to learn from their mistakes or whatever they did. So
I guess along those, what's the frequency of incidents?
Yeah.
How many of
So,
those would you do?
we had this year so far, we had 6 that we did. It was a little bit more last year because it was COVID year. People were at home and, they kind of flag different language and stuff that happens online with kids. So we did a little bit more, but it's usually around 5 to 6 that we've had over the years.
And then that doesn't encompass online? I mean, other than last year we had school online, but now there's, kids are always on social media. Does that get addressed? The Board of Education doesn't really get involved in disciplinary issues, so does that happen in the school? Does it depend on when it occurs? How does that process work?
So it's really up to the building administrator because we're not involved in that particular process, but if there is discipline that's given for something that happened outside of school or in school, then they would call us and say, hey, this issue was concerning something with, a racial slur or whatever the case may be. We really think this kid could benefit from some education. Would you be willing to do a session? And of course we would do that. So it kind of just is up to what the building administrator needs at the time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, and when do the students that speak, they audition for that
Yes.
opportunity, and when does that open?
We do not have that information yet,
Okay.
but it's going to be, it usually happens like a couple of months before the event, so I'm sure here soon we will be in like maybe around February. But yeah, we don't have it open yet.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? No? Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
to see you.
This was pretty painless.
It's just like teaching, isn't it?
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is the board president's report. And just prior to this meeting, we did what I think is, I've been here 16 years, what I think is our first orientation session for new board members. And I know I didn't have one, Kevin didn't have one, Dave didn't have one, Lakeisha said she didn't have one, so we started something new
Mr. Rafe
tonight.
said I have one, so I'd like,
Oh.
I can't
The
remember.
agenda that I used for today was used with you and you. We sat down, went through all.
That was our orientation. Oh.
We had two
How
people
soon we
today.
forget.
I didn't invite anybody to those other sessions.
yeah.
Oh,
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
So it's gotten bigger and better, I will
Yes,
say.
ma'am.
So,
Trying, always trying to improve.
we are orienting our newest elected school board members who will be sworn in January. So I think we're gonna have to continue it for next month to our orientation next month, because we didn't make it all the way through our agenda. The election season is over, and we had a lot of people who got involved in the community. And so they're like, okay, we want to stay involved. And one way you can get involved is getting involved in the committees. And, Michaela just talked about the diversity committee. That's one committee under the superintendent that the community can get involved in. Through the board committees, we have finance and audit, facilities, policy, advocacy. Am I missing anything? I think I'm good. But we have committees to get involved in. Mr. Rafe has committees that the community can get involved in. And let me tell you, we always need people to make hot dogs at the concession stand. And so there are numerous ways to get involved. And, you know, people keep asking me, what are you going to do once you get off the board? And I said, I can make a heck of a hot dog at the concession stand. So join me in volunteering at the concession stand. But we always need good volunteers in this district. And that's how we get things done with redistricting. We have a group of volunteers who get involved in redistricting. The Olentangy Education Foundation, they always need great volunteers to help them. So if you got excited during the election and want to do more and learn more, get involved in a committee. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Rafe.
Thank all these people. Could have introduced her daughter. You know, it is her first presentation, so we'll give her a break. Well done, both of you guys did a great job, so thank you. Thank you and welcome everybody. It's great to be back here in our administrative building. Again, maybe that's just another sign of one more step to normalcy that hopefully we're heading. So as always, I like to start with these Living the Mission slides. I got to go down to the Ohio School Boards Association. We've had students participating in the Student Achievement Fair. So these are some students from our STEM Academy. Madison here displayed her NASA Grow Station for the Student Achievement Fair. And that group has done a presentation. Their vegetables, actually they're growing lettuce and radishes on the space station developed by our students. So, and then I practiced his name and I just dropped it. Athvara and Caleb shared their time capsule. They built a scale model of the Olentangy Academy, so that was really interesting. The other, in front of the kind of clear thing in front of the Madison there is a machine they use to practice laparoscopic procedures. So she was tying sutures while she was talking to me.
Seriously?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Anyways, our teachers, Catherine Kelly and Amanda Cleary, were there with the students, and they just do a great job. So we're very, very proud of the STEM kids for doing that work. Our Teacher Academy students are participating in a program of reading to elementary and preschool classes all throughout the district. So members of the Teacher Academy and our leadership team went out and read Amy Wu and the Patchwork Dragon. I got to go to a class over at Shanahan Preschool. It was just a great time. So thanks to that group for setting that up and participating in that activity. We got some media coverage on this. The 8th grade STEM kids at Shanahan Middle School did their annual Pumpkin Catapult competition. So they designed those catapults and they competed in teams in a variety of different activities. So that was great to see. Thanks to I think Channel 6 covered that story. Veterans Day is always, again, having children in the military and a daughter that is actually a veteran now. This is always really, really near and dear to my heart, but our schools really do a lot to celebrate Veterans Day all throughout the district. So care packages and recognition ceremonies and parades. And of course, they were slightly modified still due to COVID, but we had a lot of activity on Veterans Day. So couldn't be more proud of all of our staff and students and community that come together to celebrate and honor our veterans. Hopefully you all got your copy of the quality profile in the mail last week. This is one of the mechanisms we use to connect with the entire community. So every person in the district gets this quality profile, and it highlights provides an executive summary that updates our taxpayers on academic achievement, state funding, student enrollment, and it's a brief look at all the things going on in the district. So I'm really proud of our communications department and for putting that together. It's hard to believe, but fall sports are over here in the state. Actually, I think the only group still playing is football's in the final 8, so they've got a couple more weeks to go, but all of our teams are now out of the football tournament. But these are the fall athletic highlights from Berlin High School. So you see a number of student athletes and coaches and teams being recognized. Liberty High School had a great fall. Give a shout out to Coach Jen Chapman and the volleyball team that finished as state runner-ups last weekend. It's hard to believe, but Coach Chapman has been at Liberty since it's opened. Been the only volleyball coach at Liberty High School, so that's just a tremendous accomplishment, and I'm just really proud of her and her team making it to states in volleyball. We got all of our volleyball programs are really good. So these are the Olentangy High School fall athletic highlights, which again, a number of coaches and teams. We had a good fall all throughout the district, and then finally at Orange High School, you see there the volleyball was district champ and a regional finalist, so 2 of our 4 schools were in that final 8 in the state, which is a great accomplishment. So congratulations to all of those fall athletes, coaches, and teams. November 8th through 12th was the National School Psychology Week, so I just want to give a shout out to our Olentangy school psychologists. They came together for some professional learning here, but they do a great job of supporting our students with disabilities in the IEP process and in many other areas, so we're proud of our school psychologists. And then if you saw in the dispatch, there was a letter to the editor written by the Wyandotte-run PTO president, and it was just really interesting. She wrote to the dispatch about how the school's new brand and mascot, the Wildcat, has been instrumental in connecting with the school and local business community. So they've started their Wyandotte-run Wildcat. He visits sponsors in the community and community helpers, and the principal is highlighting it in his weekly newsletter, and it's really kind of taken off over there at Wyandotte-run on where in the world is the Wildcat. So that was really a nice article, so thank you to, it was Sarah Miller who wrote that. So I want to give you an update on where we are with the COVID and our mitigation strategies. You see there back in August, we started with around 450 cases. We had a steady decline into September. We hovered, and things were looking really, really good in October. Come October 11th, you see there we started hovering down right at 100, and then October 25th, I think October 31st might have been Halloween, and it was scary in terms of what happened after Halloween with regards to COVID. So our numbers have continued to steadily climb, unfortunately. This could be a lot of factors. This was this was predicted by the health experts and the doctors. As the weather changes, people come back inside, there's a lot more proximity. So now we're back up hovering around 450. We had a dip yesterday and then went back up again today by 125. So at this time, I'm not recommending any changes to our mitigation strategies. Some districts have announced, that they're going to go to a recommended mask policy after the first of the year. Some are looking at mid-January. I'll have a meeting here before our next board meeting on December 8th with our medical advisory team in the health district and have some information about where we'll be. But I'm going to wait till December 8th to make that decision about what it looks like after for the rest of this school calendar year, and then where we are in January. Still hopeful that we'll be moving in that direction come January, though. So this was a question we got at some of the town halls, and I just want to spend a minute highlighting, because questions come up about our professional learning opportunities in the district. And I think there's a perception that the 3 days of professional development that we do in the district that are district-led learning opportunities, they're half days that we district-wide do something. And as you heard, if you remember, Vince DiTilio gave the presentation on student agency. We use those half of the morning there to do that district-wide professional development, and then in the afternoon on those days, building level teams, departmental teams collaborate in the afternoon. But there are an enormous number of opportunities our people have for professional learning all throughout the district, and it's happening all the time. It happens on a daily basis, and this is probably the most powerful and the most impactful. Is we have built into all of our schedules daily collaboration time amongst grade levels, teams, departments, so that they can go over individual student data, they can co-plan their instruction, they can dig into what the standards mean, how to best align their instructional practices to meet the standards, and it happens on a daily basis all throughout the district. The curriculum team also goes out and supports building teams, grade level teams, department level teams, on specifically these vocabulary blueprints, math models, and the elementary math model and the student agency tools that support the district-wide professional development. The district also offers a wide variety of trainings throughout the school year that staff attend. So the trainings could range from a student safety program like CPI, which stands for the Crisis Prevention Institute. I know. You didn't think I knew what it meant, did you? I Googled it before I came up here. Full transparency. But that's a crisis prevention model of how we restrain kids safely for the students that are in crisis and for our staff. And that's an ongoing training all throughout the year. Foundations training, which is a literacy instruction program we use all throughout the district. So those trainings are happening all throughout the year. Some are required, and then other staff opt into. We have the Olentangy Professional Development Academy. So this school year we have already in there, and they get added to on throughout the year. But right now, as of today, there are 40 unique classes for the 2021-22 school year that are being offered. So those courses range from book studies around emotional intelligence to intensive certification programs like Orton Gillingham. So again, there's been hundreds of participants in those 40 unique programs. And then teachers are provided with the opportunity to attend numerous special events that push them to grow as educators, conference-style of learning events like the Think Tank or the One Community Conference or our Elevate Conference capture all the excitement of a national professional conference, but they're done here in our district by our staff for our staff. So we save a lot of money by doing that and using our professionals. So those 3 district-wide professional development days are important, but they are far from all the most important professional development that happens all throughout the district. So finally, I want to highlight these action items. We have 2 new administrators joining our team. Michelle Mancini, who was previously a kitchen manager at Orange Middle, is now coming over to be an assistant supervisor in the food service department. And then Michael Ward is replacing Jeremy Mitchell as the supervisor for our custodial maintenance and field tech group. You see on there student overnight, not a state trip. So we're planning, again, another indication of a step towards normalcy are on the agenda for approval. We have a contract with Train for a chiller at Tyler Run, and then tractors from Voss Brothers for $120,711 that, to maintain our grounds. And there's our important dates, Thanksgiving holiday, and then the next board meeting, December 9th. We'll be back here. Questions?
Any questions? Okay, no, thank you. Thank you very much. Mrs. Hatfield, Treasurer's Report, please.
Thank you and good evening. Ooh. I'm not used to let me get that. There we go. Sorry, he's a little taller than I am. So we have a couple of items this evening. Of course, the 5-year forecast, the second reading of is a presentation that we will discuss here shortly. But that will also be on the agenda for your approval this evening. Amended appropriations or budget changes for FY 2022. Our October board meeting minutes are also available for your approval this evening. And then we have 2 donations that we would like to recognize. $1,000 from Rick and Emily Makros, forgive me if I did not pronounce that correctly, to the Shanahan Middle School Wrestling Program, and over $1,200 for a supplemental girls basketball coaching position from the Liberty Athletic Boosters to Liberty High School. So those represent the action items. I wanted to touch base just briefly about House Bill 126 for our community. This is a piece of legislation that is currently being heard by the Senate Ways and Means Committee. It is a bill that will restrict the Board of Education from filing property valuation complaints or counter complaints for property not owned by the district. So this is a bill that would take away our ability to go and be a part of the Board of Revision hearings when a commercial property brings their valuation into question and generally wants to reduce it. We have an opportunity as a Board of Education to represent ourselves in that conversation and fight that devaluation. This is important for us to be a party at the table because it's our one and only opportunity to protect the property valuation that we have within our community. As we've talked about in our 5-year forecast updates and other general updates, over 68% or at 68% of our revenue is coming from general property taxes. So it's important for us to make sure that that tax base remains strong and that devaluation process isn't significant enough to cause a significant loss in revenue. So we have worked with our legislators. We have sent our representatives notification that we are in opposition of this bill. We have also submitted written testimony to be heard at the Senate Ways and Means Committee. So it is on record why we oppose this and what it could potentially do for the district if it is passed as written with its amendments. So more to come on that as it continues through the legislative process. We are also scheduled for our eFinance Plus budgetary implementation. Will begin December 1. It's hard to believe it's here. 9 months flew by quickly. So as of early December, we will be issuing payments and handling our accounts receivable through that process. And then January 1, we will bring payroll online so that we have a full implementation. And we've been providing online education opportunities, educational opportunities for the end users, whether that's a end user that's putting in the requisitions, or also for our approvals in that system. Approvers in that system. And so we'll continue with that training. We have some open houses planned in the next 2 to 3 weeks to continue to provide opportunities for our staff to bring in work documents, and we can help guide them through how they go through those processes and approve requisitions and keep the fiscal process moving as smoothly as possible through that transition. So we're excited to finally be close to the finish line on that project. That project we engaged in as part of our strategic plan for enhancing our efficiencies with our HR department and our payroll and receivables items, and bringing on board more technology to help enhance the product that we can provide for our community and staff. Are there any questions I can answer for you?
Any questions?
I have, it's about House Bill 126, because it's
Yeah.
been crossing our desks
Yeah.
for everything OSBA. And
Yeah, they've been very active.
yeah. So what did that pass, now that it's at the Senate Ways and Means, what did it pass the House at? Do you remember?
I don't know what the vote was.
Like, or,
Is that what you're asking?
yeah, I'm like, how
Yeah.
much
I don't know what the vote was, but it was, I mean,
in favor?
It was in favor, oh, yeah.
Right.
And the problem is that if a property gets, a commercial property gets reduced, then somebody else has to make up the difference, you know, because
Right.
that's what happens. That's unfortunately one of the things of Ohio property taxes that is kind of crazy. So if someone's, you know, property is reduced, then that has to be made up elsewhere, so other people then are penalized.
So for a taxpayer, they will see it in the effective tax rate that is applied and they have to pay, right? So when we put an item on the ballot, we will assess a certain millage rate. As the valuations increase, that millage rate rolls back so that we don't collect more than we had said we would collect at the time that it was approved by the voters. So with as property valuations decrease, that means the overall pot of money is still collected, but now it's spread out and the others who didn't have the devaluation are paying more of that. When we talk about Board of Revision cases, as a policy of the board, we do not go forward with claims against residential properties. Residential properties we leave be, but what we're looking at are the commercial properties that really have an opportunity to have significant valuations on the books. For example, I don't, like, Polaris Mall, you know, large, like the JP Morgan Chase building that's large. Those are the types of Board of Revision cases that we file complaints or counter complaints. They're large commercials. Those two organizations have not filed complaints. I don't mean to draw them out as a specific example, other than to say that's the type of property that we look at when we're talking about Board of Revision cases.
So to the taxpayer, if this bill gets passed, our effective rate will be
Creep up.
higher and we will pay.
If a property is deemed to go through this process
It
and be
qualifies,
devalued,
right.
yeah.
Right, because we no longer, what the bill says is that we would have to pass a resolution for every opportunity we wanted to take to the Board of Revision and file a complaint or counter complaint. It's almost administratively impossible for us to do that as a board that meets 1 to 2 times a month, right? I mean, to have those individual case resolutions brought to the Board of Education to vote on, and then for us to take those into hearing is really impractical. The other component that was part of the new amendment was that we would have to send notification to each owner of the property if we were to challenge or wanted to bring a counter complaint or complaint against them. As it stands right now, there is no notification process to enter a Board of Revision hearing by either the property owner or the Board of Education if we want to file anything. So it goes to the hearing docket is reviewed, and that's how both parties kind of get involved and understand the information at play. It's putting the onus on the Board of Education when we're not staffed. I mean, you guys are elected officials, you have full-time jobs, you're not here to be attorneys and serve in that function. So it just puts too much onus on the Board of Education to be a part of those conversations and either file the counter complaint or complaint that says, please don't reduce this, and here are like sales in the area. We have examples of where the property valuation that you're giving is not, it's not feasible based on the area and location, et cetera. So we really are not in support of something that takes away our right to be a part of those conversations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? No, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll let you get back to your seat. Okay, next on the agenda is public participation.
Yes, please. So I will read the description of the policy as I pull the public participation slips out of our collection box. Public participation is the community's time to present any ideas, issues, or concerns to the Board of Education. Public participation is not a dialogue or discussion. It is an opportunity to present any ideas or concerns to the board in a public forum. The Board of Education will respectfully listen to the comments. Public participation will last for a maximum of 30 minutes. Each participant has a limit of 3 minutes to address the Board of Education. Participants will not be able to cede their 3 minutes to another person. Participants must state their full name and address when stepping to the podium. Public participation procedures are established by Board Policy 0169.1. The policy was revised by the Board of Education on October 12th, 2021. The policy in its entirety is available on the district website as an exhibit to the October 12th, 21 meeting minutes. It is also available, it will be available in the board documents as soon as that is revised and updated by Neola. So we have just one participation slip this evening. We have Courtney Boulware. If you would please come to the podium. She would like to address curriculum. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Courtney Boulware, and I live at 268 Olentangy Meadows Drive. I'm here to talk about two recent items that were brought to my attention. One, a book provided to students directly, and the other, a resource provided by the administration to teachers. First, the book. The Other Americans was assigned to a 10th grade class in Olentangy. When a parent raised concerns, they were lied to by the teacher and told that it is an approved book. It was not, in fact, approved at that time, although it since has been. On the approval form, it reads that there are, quote, a few sexual situations and none are explicit, end quote. Well, I'll let you be the judge. Here are some quotes. Quote, I kissed the base of her throat and slid down, taking her nipples one after the other into my mouth. On her navel was a piercing but no ring, and I kissed the tiny little dot, sliding slowly down. When I tasted her, she coiled her fingers into my hair with an urgency that thrilled me. Quote, hell yes, I would have said. I fucked her on this table right here, twice. You should have seen the tits on this one, or that one gives fantastic head. Quote, you fucked her, didn't you? Good for you, dude. Now let's go shoot some guns. By any standard, this material is obscene and thus a violation of Ohio Revised Code 2907.31, which reads in part that no person with knowledge of its character or content shall recklessly do any of the following: directly sell, deliver, furnish, disseminate, provide, exhibit, rent, or present to a juvenile, a group of juveniles, any material or performance that is obscene or harmful to juveniles. Moving on to the resource endorsed by the administration. In October, teachers were given a document of resources for LGBTQ History Month. One organization listed under resources for students, so this is something teachers were recommended to provide to students, is Mosaic. Let's see what Mosaic has on their website, shall we? A link to a video titled A Trans and Cis Review of Clit Pumps, links to the following websites: Fucking Trans Women, Sex Toy Review Blog, insert trans here, sex toy reviews. Under services, this organization lists safer sex supplies with the description that we've got them in all shapes, sizes, textures, and flavors, and we're ready to answer your questions about how to use them. We are trained to provide confidential and insightful testing sessions where you will walk away understanding more than you came with. Mosaic says they are an organization serving those ages 13 to 29. So, to recap, the Olentangy District considers this to be an appropriate resources for kids as young as 13. Who in their right mind thinks that any of this is okay for children? And how is this stuff still happening after all the concerns that parents have raised lately? At this point, I have no other option but to assume it's purposeful and that our children are being deliberately targeted with over-sexualized content. That is disgusting, and Olentangy should be ashamed of themselves. Finally, I call on our SROs to protect our children and press criminal charges when appropriate when these things occur. Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have some discussion items. We have the second reading of board policy. Dr. Jack Fetty.
Good evening. Is there any discussion on the policies that you'll be taking action on?
And just as a reminder, these were presented at our last meeting, and this is the second reading in which we'll vote on. Any other discussion?
I have a question.
Okay.
Mr. Fetty, Dr. Fetty. 2271, that is College Credit Plus.
Okay.
So could you explain to me the difference between what the remediation-free standards, how they've changed?
I'm going to need my binder. 2271. So it clarifies that the courses that students take through College Credit Plus must qualify as remediation-free courses. So that if there is a course that is classified as remedial, students are not eligible to take it under College Credit Plus.
Because there's some classes that colleges offer that are remediation classes, and so the kids have to take them in order to go on to the next level of classes, but they don't get college credit for those. It's like, and isn't it based off of your ACT scores, I think, Jack?
So there's, yeah, that's one measure of remediation free, yeah. But this is specifically to the courses that are eligible under the program.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Next, thank you. We have the second reading of the 5-year financial forecast. Emily?
Clicker went under the podium.
Oh my gosh.
Our most unathletic member of DLT is trying to.
I got it, Dustin. I got it. Got back up and everything.
I don't know how to follow that. I'm sorry. We're gonna stay way back here. Thank you. Let me stop laughing for a moment. As a reminder, we put on this slide the purpose, objectives, and methodology for the 5-year forecast. I won't read through them verbatim again at this presentation, but we wanted to make sure that they are available and still represented as we talk about the 5-year forecast. Because we didn't have additional changes from the Board of Education after our previous reading in our October meeting, we have the same outcome or set of numbers to bring forward. These lines represent the total revenue, total expenditure, revenue versus expenditures, unreserved fund balance, and days cash on hand for those for the 5-year forecast. And looking at the numbers going left to right across the screen, we are looking at the current fiscal year 2022. This is the first year of projections that we have in the 5-year forecast, as we are not completely through this fiscal year until June 30th. And then carrying out to fiscal year 2026. As you can see on the slide, we anticipate having a positive cash variance that equates to approximately 79 days of operating cash. Our informal policy on cash reserve is to have 2 to 3 months cash balance, so 60 to 90 days cash balance on hand to begin the next fiscal year to make sure that we can continue operations while we wait for the next round of general real estate collections to come in. So we are meeting that metric through fiscal year 2026. Our last levy campaign was in 2020. We promised our voters we would stay off the ballot for 3 years. And at this time, we believe we could stretch that to 4 to 5 years. These numbers include preliminary estimates of the new Fair School funding plan. Those numbers will not be available to us in actual until December. But when the Ohio Department of Education delayed the implementation of issuing and rolling out the new formula, they did not delay the November requirement for us to file a forecast update. So we have to file the forecast update with our estimations that we have, but I'm pretty confident that we will not see significant changes to those once our actuals are released. Any updates that are required or needed from that new information, we will file with our May forecast update. Our risk assessment includes real estate valuations. We've had a discussion a little bit about that in regards to House Bill 126. But generally, we are looking at delinquency collections, how far behind in property tax collections are our Delaware County or Franklin County. More than, I would say, 99% of our collections are coming from Delaware County, so we really focus in there. We have a very small area of property in Franklin. Board of Revision and Tax Appeals for Class 2. Due to COVID, not only is House Bill 126 an item of concern, but with the pandemic, Class 2 properties have an opportunity to ask for a devaluation after that January 1st deadline, which is the traditional deadline that they have. They usually only have one time a year to ask for that. Because of the pandemic, they're able to do that throughout the year. So we are watching that and making sure that we take those cases to hearing as much as possible. If need be, we offer settlement collections on those items for those cases, but we try to make sure that we protect that valuation as much as possible. I touched on the Fair School Funding Plan and the release of actuals in December. Our advocacy efforts will pick up probably the end of December, beginning of January, once we have an opportunity to do some more analysis on that information. And then, of course, enrollment growth is always a risk, a challenge for us as we continue to grow. It impacts our personnel costs and our benefits costs. It impacts our facilities needs for our elementary, middle, and high school levels, and our contracted services for our preschool, as well as our special education population. Are there questions I can answer for you regarding the forecast?
Anyone have questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll let you get back to your seat. Mhm. Okay, next on the agenda are the board action items. So we have one, which is to approve the board policy. Do I have a motion to approve the policies, the policy updates? So moved. Do I have a second?
A second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Patrick,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Dr. Weiss,
Yes.
and Mrs. Fiesel.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, we need approval on the, oh, sorry. Do you want to give do you want to present the treasure action items? Sorry
Yes,
about that.
please. I would like to present treasurer action items A through D for approval, please.
Any questions on, do I have a motion? I'll move. Do you have a second?
A second. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Patrick,
Yes.
Dr. Weiss,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
and Mrs. Fiesel.
Yes.
Thank you.
Superintendent action items, what do you have for us?
Yes, ma'am, I'd like to present superintendent action items A through F for approval.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Second? Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion on that? Okay, call the roll, please.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Dr. Weiss,
Yes.
and Mrs. Fiesel.
Yes.
Thank you.
And now I need a motion to enter into executive session as permitted by section 121.22 G4 of the Ohio Revised Code for purpose of preparing for conducting or reviewing negotiations or bargaining session with public employees, and it's permitted by section 121.22 G1 of the Ohio Revised Code to consider the employment and compensation of public employees. Do you have a motion?
I'll motion.
And second?
Second.
Okay. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Patrick,
Yes.
Dr. Weiss,
Yeah. Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
and Mrs. Fiesel.
Yes, and we will now go into executive session, and we will come out only to adjourn. Our next meeting is December 9th, here. Thank you very much. We just need a motion to adjourn, and the reason that Kevin isn't here is because he had to go pick up his daughters. So I just want to,
I'll move to adjourn.
Second. Okay, call the roll, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Dr. Weiss?
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
And Mrs. Fiesel?
Yes.
Thank you.
See you December 9th.